It was a crisp autumn morning at O'Hare International Airport, and the terminal buzzed with the sleepy chatter of early travelers. Among them, Claire waited quietly near gate B7, hands wrapped around a lukewarm paper cup of coffee. Her scarf was tucked neatly into the collar of her navy pea coat, and her dark hair was pulled into a loose bun, though a few strands had already slipped free. She looked calm on the outside, but her fingers fidgeted with the zipper of her handbag, betraying her nerves. Claire wasn't afraid of flying, she had been on dozens of flights, but today was different. Today, she was flying alone to Denver for the first time in years, and it wasn't a business trip or a visit to family. It was something else entirely. Something quiet and personal. But what truly made her chest ache with anticipation was that her husband, James, would be the one flying the plane. It wasn't unusual. James had been a pilot for nearly a decade, but he rarely flew routes where their schedules aligned. This morning had felt almost cinematic. She'd kissed him goodbye in their kitchen at 4:30 a.m., just like she always did, then hours later she found herself boarding a plane captained by him. There was something poetic about that. They'd even laughed about it before she left for the airport, and he'd promised to fly extra smooth just for her. Claire's seat was 14A, window, her favorite. She'd picked it days in advance, imagining herself staring out at the clouds with a subtle smile, secretly proud that the man steering them above the earth was her husband. Boarding was called, and she stepped into the line of passengers funneling into the jet bridge. She felt a strange blend of excitement and serenity, as though she were entering a small world only she and James knew the secret to. She made her way down the aisle, scanning seat numbers until she reached her row. But when she got there, she paused. There was already someone in 14A. A woman, maybe early 40s, immaculately dressed in a crisp white blouse and tailored blazer, was seated at the window, scrolling through her phone with an air of distraction. Her carry-on was tucked beneath the seat, her coat folded on her lap. Claire blinked, slightly thrown. She double-checked her boarding pass. 14A. "Excuse me," Claire said gently, with a polite smile. "I think that might be my seat." The woman looked up, surprised. Her brows furrowed. "Really?" she asked, already reaching for her phone. She tapped through her airline app. "I thought I had the window." "No, mine says 14C. "Huh." Claire waited, still smiling, but the woman didn't move. "I hope it's okay," the woman added quickly, with a breezy laugh. "I just really prefer the window. I get a little motion sick, and I fly so often, middle seats just drive me crazy." It wasn't aggressive, but it wasn't exactly apologetic either. It had the tone of someone used to getting what they wanted, used to things being flexible in their favor. Claire hesitated. She could have pushed the issue. She'd reserved the seat. She had every right to sit there. But something in her, maybe it was the early hour, or her quiet nature, or the knowledge that James was just a few feet away in the cockpit, made her exhale and simply say, "Okay." She slid into the aisle seat, feeling a tightness in her chest she hadn't expected. The woman beside her didn't say thank you or offer to switch later in the flight. She just returned to her phone, and that was that. Claire turned toward the aisle, suddenly very aware of how impersonal flying could feel. She wasn't mad, exactly, but there was a flicker of something deeper, something like disappointment. She'd been looking forward to that quiet moment by the window, a private connection to James up in the sky. It wasn't just about the view. It was about him. About them. She heard the familiar ding of the PA system, and her breath caught when James's voice filled the cabin. "Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is Captain James speaking." His voice had always sounded warm and steady to her, but today it filled the plane with a strange intimacy. She noticed a few passengers glance around, some smiling at the pleasant cadence of his voice. But to Claire, it was a quiet reminder of what she'd lost in row 14. The woman at the window didn't react. She didn't know, of course. She had no idea. And that's when Claire felt it, that small, almost imperceptible shift. The moment when a story begins. When something small starts to grow. She sat back in her seat, not saying a word. But the weight of that stolen window, and the voice of her husband in the air, hung between her and the woman beside her like a silence that hadn't yet found its meaning. The plane was 30 minutes into the flight when the woman at the window finally spoke. "Do you fly often?" she asked, turning slightly toward Claire. Claire, who had been pretending to read the in-flight magazine, looked up. "Sometimes," she said. Her voice was calm, but her tone gave nothing away. The woman nodded, still half-turned in her seat. "I fly constantly. Work, mostly. I used to hate it, but now it's just part of the job, you know." Claire gave a small smile, polite but distant. She didn't want to talk, not really. Not right now. Not when the view out the window, her window, was being enjoyed by someone else. "I'm Dana," the woman offered, as though trying to make up for earlier. Claire hesitated for a breath, then nodded. "Claire. Well, thanks again for letting me have the window. I just can't do middle seats." "You're very sweet." Claire gave another small smile, but her eyes drifted to the seat back in front of her. She wondered if Dana would still be smiling if she knew. If she knew that Claire hadn't wanted the window out of convenience, but because she wanted to feel just a little closer to the man flying the plane. Because in a world of 200 strangers, one row, one seat, it meant something to her. She thought of James in the cockpit. How focused he would be. How he probably hadn't even realized yet that she wasn't sitting where she said she'd be. That made her chest ache a little more. The drink cart came by. Dana asked for white wine, even though it was still morning. Claire took coffee. "Are you headed home?" Dana asked after a sip. "No. Just visiting." "Oh. Family?" Claire paused. "No. Just, taking a break." Dana nodded, but something in her shifted. She gave Claire a longer look. "You don't seem like someone who flies for breaks. You seem more. I don't know, grounded." Claire almost laughed. Grounded. What a word. Before she could reply, the intercom came back on. James's voice, again. Announcing a slight change in altitude, a little turbulence ahead, but nothing to worry about. Claire listened like she always did, like every syllable mattered. His voice was calm, confident. It was the voice she fell in love with on long drives and whispered nights. The voice that talked her through her first miscarriage. The voice that once promised her a house near the water, even if they never got it. Dana didn't flinch this time, but her brows lifted ever so slightly. "Nice voice. Sounds young." Claire smiled faintly. "He is. What airline is this again?" "West Vista." Dana tilted her head. "I think I've flown with this guy before. The captain, I mean. James, right?" "Yeah. I remember thinking his voice was too nice for this job." She laughed at her own comment. Claire looked out the corner of her eye, biting back the sharpness that rose in her throat. Dana still had no clue. She just kept drinking her wine, glancing occasionally out the window like she'd earned it. It wasn't until they hit a pocket of turbulence and the plane gave a gentle jolt that Dana's posture stiffened. Claire could feel the tension in her seatmate's body. She didn't say anything, just watched. And then Dana muttered under her breath, "God, I hate this part." Claire spoke quietly, almost without thinking. "You're safe. He knows what he's doing." Dana looked at her, surprised. "What?" Claire blinked. "The pilot. James. He's very good at what he does." Dana nodded slowly. "Yeah, I guess you'd know that if you fly a lot." Claire didn't reply. She just turned her head slightly toward the aisle, letting her silence do the talking. Dana, for the first time, really looked at her. A few minutes passed. Then, out of nowhere, Dana said, "Hey. I feel like I was rude earlier." Claire looked back, surprised. "The seat," Dana continued. "I kind of just took it. I didn't mean to be selfish, I don't know, I guess I didn't expect anyone to say anything. I've been on the road for weeks, and I'm tired." "That's not an excuse. I didn't think." Claire stared at her. For a moment, she considered brushing it off. Saying it was fine. But something about the way Dana was looking at her now, genuinely remorseful, the kind of look people give when they realize they weren't as kind as they should have been, it softened her. Claire nodded once. "It's okay. I just really wanted the window today." Dana's lips parted like she wanted to ask why, but something in Claire's face must have told her not to. She looked down at her hands. Another 10 minutes passed in silence. Then Dana whispered, "He's yours, isn't he?" Claire turned. "What?" "The pilot. James. You know him. More than just a passenger would." Claire held her breath, then exhaled. "He's my husband." Dana looked stunned. Her face turned red, then pale. She covered her mouth. "Oh my God." Claire looked away again, letting the moment settle. "I'm so sorry," Dana whispered. "I didn't know. I never would have." "It's okay," Claire said softly. "You couldn't have known." But even as she said it, her heart trembled. Because even though Dana hadn't known, the window had been taken anyway. And something about that, something symbolic, clung to her in a way she couldn't quite name. The cabin lights dimmed slightly as the plane leveled off into a smooth glide above the clouds. A quiet lull settled in. Dana had gone silent after her realization, fidgeting with the sleeves of her blazer. Claire sat upright in the aisle seat, coffee long gone, heart beating louder than the hum of the engines. It wasn't anger she felt. Not quite. It was something more tender, and more complicated. Disappointment, yes. But also something bruised and vulnerable. The kind of ache that comes not from what was taken, but from what was lost in the silence that followed. "Can I switch with you?" Dana asked suddenly, her voice low but urgent. Claire turned, surprised. "I mean, God, I should have done it earlier," Dana said. "I was selfish. I didn't even think about what that seat might have meant to you." Claire's first instinct was to refuse. It felt too late, too awkward. But Dana was already unbuckling her seatbelt, moving with a kind of quiet determination, like she needed to fix something for her own sake. They switched seats in a bit of a clumsy shuffle. Claire slid into the window seat, finally, and leaned slightly into it, not for the view, but for the stillness of the moment. It was beautiful out there. The clouds were thick but glowing, tinted with gold. The sun hovered just above them, like the sky itself was holding its breath. Claire stared out, her palm resting lightly against the glass, and for the first time since boarding, she felt that closeness she'd been craving. That unspoken connection. She thought of James again. How he used to press his forehead to hers after a long shift, whispering, "You're my home." How he'd leave notes in her coat pocket before a flight, little scribbles that read, "If I could land this plane in your heart, I would." How he held her when they lost the baby last year and said, "We'll fly again." A tear slipped down her cheek. "You okay?" Dana asked quietly, now in the aisle seat. Claire didn't answer right away. She just kept looking out, letting her thoughts drift in rhythm with the sky. "I didn't tell you the full truth earlier," she said, voice barely above a whisper. "This isn't just a break. This flight, it's something else." Dana turned toward her slightly, listening. Claire's fingers curled around the edge of the window. "I've been distant. From James. From everything. After we lost the baby, I kind of disappeared into myself. We both did. He threw himself into flying. I threw myself into being quiet. I started questioning everything, if we were still connected, if we were okay. Dana was still, absorbing every word. This flight was my way of reaching out, Claire continued. I didn't tell him I was going to be on it until this morning. I just showed him my ticket and said, I'm flying with you today. He looked so surprised. So happy. He didn't say anything dramatic, just kissed my forehead and said, then I'll get us there safely. Dana swallowed hard, eyes glossy. I wanted the window, Claire said, softer now, because I wanted to see what he sees. I wanted to imagine him up there, guiding us through clouds and storms, and feel like I was part of that again. Even if he couldn't see me. I just wanted to feel close. Silence. Then Dana, voice trembling, I'm so sorry, Claire. I really am. Claire nodded slowly. I know. And thank you. For switching. They sat like that for a while, two strangers connected by a strange, invisible thread. Outside, the light shifted. The plane began its slow descent into Denver. Claire could feel it, the gentle drop in altitude, the soft changes in engine hum. She could almost sense James's hands on the controls. Steady. Certain. And then, something unexpected. The PA dinged again. James's voice returned, but this time, it wasn't routine. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll begin our descent shortly. But before we do, I'd like to take a personal moment, if you'll allow me. The cabin rustled. People glanced up, curious. Claire froze. In row 14, there's a woman I love very much, James said. She surprised me today by showing up on this flight. We've had a hard year, the kind that makes you question if you're still flying in the same direction. But she reminded me today that sometimes, even when we drift apart, love has a way of finding its course again. Claire's breath hitched. Tears blurred her vision. So, James continued, this one's for her. I promise to get us there safe, and I promise, when we land, to start again, wherever she needs us to. The intercom clicked off. Claire covered her mouth with both hands. Her shoulders shook. The woman beside her was crying too, silently. No one else in the cabin said a word. But somehow, Claire felt as though every soul on that plane had leaned in, just a little. Had felt something true in the quiet altitude of her heart. She looked back out the window. And for the first time in a long while, she didn't feel far away at all. The wheels touched down with a soft bump, and the cabin filled with the usual chorus of seatbelt clicks and shuffled bags, but to Claire, it all felt distant, like background noise to something far more intimate unfolding inside her. She stayed seated, heart still racing from James's announcement, while most of the passengers stood and began gathering their things. Dana didn't move either. She just looked at Claire with an expression that held something like reverence. I hope you two are okay, Dana said quietly. Claire wiped her eyes with the back of her sleeve. I think we will be. Dana hesitated, then offered a faint, grateful smile. Thanks for the window. Claire gave her a look, soft, understanding. Thank you for giving it back. The seatbelt sign chimed off. People began filing out into the aisle, faces already turning toward the day ahead. Claire stayed behind a moment longer, waiting for the crowd to thin before rising. As she stepped into the aisle, Dana gently touched her arm. Hey, whatever you're flying toward, I hope it's everything you're hoping for. Claire squeezed her hand, grateful. Me too. She walked out of the cabin slowly, her carry-on in hand, down the jet bridge and into the terminal's soft yellow light. Her stomach fluttered with anticipation, the kind that only comes when the past and future meet you at the same gate. And there he was. James stood just beyond the security barrier, still in uniform, cap tucked under one arm. His eyes scanned the crowd until they landed on her, and when they did, something in him seemed to ease, like a storm had passed and the sky had cleared. Claire froze for a moment, unsure of what to do. Part of her had imagined running into his arms. Another part had imagined a cautious, careful reunion. But when James took a slow step forward and opened his arms, not demanding, not dramatic, just open, she walked into them without hesitation. He held her tight, forehead against hers, breathing her in like she was oxygen. "I didn't know if that was too much," he whispered. Over the speaker. Claire laughed softly into his chest. It was just right. He pulled back to look at her, eyes glassy. "You were supposed to be in the window seat." "I know. I got there late." Someone was already sitting there. James raised an eyebrow. "She didn't know. I didn't make a scene. But, she gave it back later." "Good," he said, brushing her hair behind her ear. "I would have flown in circles until she did." That made Claire laugh again, the kind of laugh that comes with tears you're no longer afraid to feel. He leaned in, kissed her forehead gently, and held her close again. They stood like that for a while, wrapped in each other while travelers moved past them, some rushing, some yawning, some scrolling through their phones. But Claire didn't notice. For the first time in a long time, she wasn't drifting or watching life from a window. She was in it. Grounded and weightless at once. They didn't need to talk about the pain they'd carried. Not yet. That would come in time, in the quiet car ride home, over reheated leftovers and bare feet on the couch. In the stillness of night, when the house was dark and they finally let all the words out. For now, all that mattered was that the flight had landed. The pilot and the passenger were together again. And for the first time in months, Claire felt something she hadn't felt in a while. Home. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe, like the video, and share it with your friends. It really helps the channel grow, and I truly appreciate it. Thank you.